sent this on Instagram. It says narcissists don't co-parent, they counter-parent. And of course, if you're new here, I'm actually a diagnosed narcissist. They don't care about the collateral emotional damage done to the children as long as it hurts the other parent. Yeah, y'all. A lot of narcissistic people make it extremely difficult to parent with them. And counter-parenting pretty much just means they go against whatever you want them to do. Whatever it takes to make your life harder. If you want to parent a certain type of way, that narcissistic person, even if they are mentally in agreement with you, they will just physically do the opposite. Different religion, different food, different exercise routine, different school, whatever it is, just to make your life harder. And yes, the children tend to be the collateral damage, and the narcissistic person typically doesn't care how the kids are affected as long as they themselves, their selfish needs are being met. As long as the other parent is affected negatively in some way, shape, or form. It's almost impossible to co-parent with a narcissist. So you have to look up parallel parenting. And I'll do a longer video on parallel parenting later, y'all. Make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks.
Let's talk 5 tips on co-parenting and communication with an unhealthy ex. Now, ideally, you wouldn't have to talk at all, but when you have children with an ex, some level of communication will likely always be necessary, or at least until they're out of the house. So 1, communicate through neutral and recorded mediums. Avoid phone calls. Instead, use email, text, or even co-parenting apps to keep things neutral and to have a record of all conversations. That record can actually be useful if you ever need to go to court down the road. 2, avoid being drawn into conflict or any conversations about the past. You don't need to discuss past pains or who hurt who. Ignore any attempt that they make to pull you into conflict by avoiding these conversations. 3, redirect all conversations to prioritize the children. Keep conversations short, so if they do attempt to engage you, redirect them to the only thing that matters by saying something like, "Let's focus and only talk about what's best for the kids." 4, don't badmouth your ex to your children. It really doesn't matter what they say or do. This is harmful to your child's development, and it pulls them into this adversarial situation where they feel like they need to take sides. 5, prioritize your own health and emotional energy. Dealing with these situations is draining, so seek the help of a qualified coach or therapist to ensure that you are able to manage and resolve your emotional stress. For better relationships, download our free guide.
Keep implementing the BIF method, and your co-parent keeps coming back with those terrible emails, just they continue to onslaught, they talk about your boyfriend or your girlfriend or all of these things. Or they keep accusing you of doing things you didn't do, right? That's when you kind of implement like BIF step 2. So BIF step 2 is you say, let's say you've just gotten a very tough email from your co-parent where they include all of these accusations. Your email was perfect. It followed the BIF method. Their response had all of these accusations, things that take you off topic. Your response should be something in the neighborhood of the following. Your first line, you want to validate what their response was. So you can say, "I understand this was frustrating to you. Period. I don't think that getting into this back and forth is helpful. I disagree with your comments below. Period. We need to talk about getting Susie to gymnastics. Here's what I proposed. Here's what you proposed. Here's where I'm willing to meet in the middle." Okay? So you just have to pull it back. If they want to derail you, it's on you to pull it back. It's on you to recognize, like, hey, I have a boundary here. I'm not going to let them go down that boundary.
Boundaries.
Setting boundaries is really important. Now you have to get the other side who's not reasonable to adhere to the boundaries, but the more boundaries you have, the better. You want both parties to move on and move on separately, so you have to set up these boundaries.
Right, and one way of setting up boundaries is when, for instance, an ex says that he's going to be picking up the son for March break access and it's not his turn, and instead of picking up the phone and saying, "That's not your turn, look at the agreement," a simple email back is, "You have misinterpreted the agreement. March break this year is for me."
And in some cases, if it's really bad, then you get a third party in. So sometimes the third party takes care of the exchange.
Not have a relationship with your ex-spouse. If you're trying to co-parent and it's not going well and it's causing turbulence in your household, stop. I'm not talking about the scenarios where you realize that you've married somebody that's emotionally immature and they just can't handle a solid, healthy co-parenting relationship. Assuming both of the married people are relatively healthy and able to communicate, if there is still turbulence in that household, you got to stop the co-parenting. There's either going to be turbulence in the ex-spouse relationship or in your current relationship. Never choose your current relationship. Cut the co-parenting out. Parallel parenting is not that big of a deal. It's not that difficult. It's not bad for the kids. It's actually better for the kids in a lot of cases because it minimizes the amount of conflict in the home in which they are living now. Nobody gives a shit about the home that they used to live in. It's too late for that.
You're co-parenting correctly. Here are 5 teenagers that are letting you know what their parents did right. Let's hear them.
One of the things my parents did correctly with co-parenting was the division of time. That being said, even though I was living with my mother, I would see my father on the weekends and even some extra days that I had off of school or maybe just holidays.
One thing that my parents did good was communication and putting us first.
One of the good things that my parents did for co-parenting was make sure we were safe and that we felt loved in a healthy environment.
I think that when it came to co-parenting with my parents, something they did good on was communicating, because not every time they communicated one-on-one, it turned into an argument.
One thing that my parents did good in co-parenting was actually getting along and putting the differences aside to always put me and my sister first so that we don't ever feel that combative or we need to pick and choose.
So are you doing it right too? Leave comments below on how you co-parented correctly.